I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually think about it before I move on. What is one thing you've been wanting to start or even restart that you keep putting off? You've already thought of something, didn't you? Most people do it in the first 3 seconds. Either it's a business, a fitness goal, a difficult conversation, or even a creative project. Something you've wanted to do for months, maybe years, that keeps getting you pushed to tomorrow. Now, here's the second question. And this one really matters the most. Why haven't you started it? Actually, right? So I'm going to guess the answer isn't that you don't want it. You want it, but I'm also going to guess the answer isn't that you don't know anything about how to do it. You've probably thought about it enough to have some idea that the whole thing feels too big, too uncertain, too far from where you are right now. And so instead of starting, you wait for the right time, for more preparation, for the fear to go away, for some signal that's going to work before you commit to trying. That signal is never coming. But what I'm about to show you in this video might be the next best thing. So let's get into it. So here's the problem. The one thing about big goals, they're inspiring and paralyzing at the same time. You think about the end result, the finished business, the body you want, the life you're trying to build, and it looks enormous from where you're standing right now. So enormous that the distance between here and there feels almost insulting. Like, how am I supposed to get from this to that? And most people, without realizing it, let the distance become an excuse not to move at all. So I call this the mountain problem. You want to climb a mountain, you look at it from the bottom, you see how high it is and how far it goes, how many ways it could go wrong, and instead of taking a single step toward it, you stand at the base and think about climbing it. Just go after it. You research climbing it. You watch videos of other people climbing it. You buy gear for climbing it, and the mountain just sits there. Exactly the same height. It was when you started to think about it is where that gap started to change. The gap between thinking about doing something and actually doing it is one of the most expensive gaps in human existence. People lose years in that gap. They even lose businesses in that gap. And most importantly, they lose the best versions of themselves in that gap. And here's what's wild about that gap. It's filled by motivation. It's not filled by a better plan. It's not filled by watching one more video. I say this as someone who makes the video, right? The gap is filled by one thing and one thing only. A step. The smallest possible step possible. Slow down here. Not the whole plan is going to move super fast. Not a perfect strategy. Not a guarantee that it's going to work. But just one real tiny undeniable step in the direction of the thing you said you wanted. Did you know the moment you start something, even if it's tiny, your brain registered it as an open loop? And an open loop that your brain is already running is dramatically easier to continue than a loop that hasn't been opened yet. Understand this. It's the key insight of the whole video. In plain English, starting even badly, even completely, even with just one tiny action makes it significantly more likely that you'll continue. The hardest part of any task is not the middle. It's not even the hard parts. It's the very first moment you've begun anything at all. There's also what researchers call activation energy, the amount of energy required to start a chemical reaction. The reaction might release enormous energy once it's running, but it needs a spark to get going. Your goals work the same exact way. The activation energy required to start is almost always higher than the energy required to continue, which means the single most powerful thing you can do for almost any goal is to reduce the cost of starting as close to zero as possible. One email instead of the whole pitch deck. 5 minutes of writing instead of committing to a full draft. One set at the gym instead of a whole 2-hour workout plan. One phone call instead of complete business strategy. The smallest possible step isn't a consolidation prize for people who can't commit. It's the scientifically sound way to build momentum when momentum is what's missing. What if? I want you to imagine something. Let's call this person Alex, right? Alex has wanted to start a business for 2 years. He has the idea, he has the skills, has spent more hours than they'd like to admit researching, planning, and building out strategies in a notebook that nobody has ever seen. But Alex hasn't started because here's the thing. The plan isn't ready, the website isn't built, the branding isn't done, the market research isn't complete, and Alex is not going to launch something half finished. So the responsible thing is this: to keep preparing until it's right. And slowly, almost without noticing, Alex starts to identify more as someone who is working on a business than someone who is building one. The planning has begun the thing, the preparation has replaced the action. What if Alex had done one thing differently on day one? Not launched the whole business, not built the website, not finalized the brand, just sent one email to one potential customer asking if they'd be interested in what Alex was building. One email, 10 minutes, the smallest possible step. The email creates a response. The response creates a conversation. The conversation creates feedback. The feedback shapes the product, and suddenly Alex isn't planning a business anymore. Alex is running one, built from the ground up, one smallest possible step at a time. You are Alex, and I am Alex. Most people watching this are Alex in some area of their life. The question isn't whether you have the capability. The question is whether you're willing to send the email. Now, let me ask you something that actually stopped me cold when I ran across it. A study published in the British Journal of Health Psychology found that people who planned exactly when, where, and how they would exercise were 2 to 3 times more likely to actually follow through compared to people who just said they intended to exercise. Same motivation, same desire, same goal. 2 to 3 times more likely to actually do it, just from getting specific about the first step. 2 to 3 times, not from more discipline, not from a better mindset, not from a motivational speech, not from deciding in advance exactly what the first action would look like. Research from the Dominican University of California found that people who wrote down their goals were 42% more likely to achieve them than people who didn't. And among those who wrote down their goals, the ones who also broke those goals into specific next steps and shared them with someone who has significantly higher completion rate than those who kept them private in general, 42% of them more likely, just from writing it down, became more successful. Think about what that means for how casually most people hold their goals, carrying them around as vague intentions in their heads instead of specific commitments on paper. This is where you shift from data to application. The research isn't saying you need a perfect plan. It's saying you need a specific first step, written down, committed to, made real. That's it. The smallest possible step made concrete closes a gap that motivation and intention alone never will. I want to address something directly because I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking small steps are fine, but I need to make big moves. I need to be aggressive. I don't have time to go slow. I hear that. Trust me, I do. I want to be clear about what I'm actually saying because I'm not telling you to think small. I'm not telling you to go slow. I'm not telling you to even lower your ambition. I'm telling you that the path to big results runs through small, consistent actions. And most people never get to the big results because they're waiting to take the big swing at all things at once. Instead of taking the small step today, this is the most important distinction in the video. Think about a car engine. The engine can generate enormous power. It can move thousands of pounds of metal at high speed, but it starts with a single spark, a tiny controlled explosion in one cylinder. That spark doesn't power the car, but without it, nothing moves. Everything depends on that first spark. The smallest possible step is your spark. It's not the destination. It's not even the journey. It's the thing that makes the journey possible. And here's what happens. When you take it consistently, when you make it a non-negotiable daily action instead of something you do when you feel inspired, momentum builds. And momentum is one of the most underrated forces in human performance. It's not flashy, it doesn't announce itself, but it compounds quietly until one day you look back and you realize you've covered an enormous amount of ground. Not through any single heroic effort, but through the accumulation of thousands of small ones. Big dreams need small daily actions. That's not a limitation, that's the mechanism. So let's get practical, because I don't want this to be a video you watched and felt good about without changing anything. I want you to give a framework you can actually use today. Here's how to find your smallest possible step for anything. Step 1. Not the vague version, the specific version. Not I want to get fit. Not I want to be able to run a 5K without stopping. Not I want to be able to build a business. Not I want to make my first sale. Specifically is the difference between a dream and a goal. One lives in your head, the other has a finish line. Step 2, ask yourself, what is the absolute smallest action I could take toward this in the next 10 minutes that will count as real progress? Not perfect progress, real progress. 10 minutes is the limit. If the action takes longer than 10 minutes, it's not the smallest possible step. It's a project. Let's break it down even further. Step 3, do it before you think about it for another second. The moment of decision is when most people lose. They think about it, they weigh it, they consider whether now is the right time. And the moment dies. The smallest possible step has to be taken immediately, or the activation energy cost resets and you're back to the beginning. Step 4, record it. Write down that you did it, check a box, put a mark on your calendar, make it visible. The act of recording progress in itself is motivating. Your brain responds to evidence of moving with the desire for more movement. And step 5, do it again tomorrow. Not a bigger version, not more of it, the same smallest possible step. Consistency is the point. Repetition is the strategy. You're not trying to sprint to the finish line. You're trying to make showing up non-negotiable. That's it. 5 steps. Name it, shrink it, do it immediately, record it, and repeat. It's not complicated, but simple and easy are not the same thing. The discipline to do the small thing every day, even when it doesn't feel like enough, even when the progress isn't visible yet, even when you'd rather do nothing, that's where most people fall off. And that's exactly where the people who actually get somewhere stay on. But here's the payoff. I want to bring this back to where we started. You thought of something at the beginning of this video. That thing you've been waiting to start and wanting to start, the goal that keeps getting deferred to tomorrow, to next week, to when things settle down, to when you feel ready. I want you to hear this clearly. The version of you that starts today and takes one small, imperfect, unspectacular step is already ahead of the version of you that waits for the perfect moment to make the perfect move. Because the perfect moment doesn't exist. It has never existed for anyone who built anything real. What exists is today. What exists is right now. What exists is the smallest possible step you could take in the next 10 minutes. Before you move on to the next video, before the feeling of wanting to change fades back into the background noise of everyday life, the mountain doesn't get smaller when you stand at the bottom thinking about it. But every step you take toward it makes it bigger, and eventually it will make you bigger. Not all at once, not dramatically, not in a single moment of inspiration. You look up and then you realize the summit is closer than you thought. Not because the mountain changed, because you kept moving. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a first step. You don't need to feel ready. You need to decide. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the next step. So take it right now, today, before anything else. And before you go, I want you to do something right now in the comments. Tell me what your smallest possible step is. The one thing, specific, small, doable in 10 minutes that you're committing to doing today towards the thing you've been putting off. Write it down in the comments. Drop your step below. Let's see what you're going to do today, and I'll see you in the next one.